So yes, it's actually been a little bit over a year since I bought my 10.5-inch iPad Pro from 2017, and by the looks of the iPad Pro lineup, it doesn't seem to get refreshed every 12 months, more like every 18, which is why, yes, we had our unboxing for this iPad in my old attic. A lot has changed since then, but I think iPads don't get enough credit these days, that they're so light, they're so portable, and yet still so powerful, and I think so efficient at the iOS apps that are optimized on iPad, that I wanted to take a moment and take a look back, given a lot of people liked our iPod Touch video. I understand this is a bit different, but here is the 2017 iPad Pro 10.5-inch review, 1 year later. What still amazes me about the iPad Pro lineup is how incredibly thin they're able to make these devices. It basically feels thinner than an iPhone itself, but I think that's mostly because they know someone's going to be getting a keyboard case or a smart cover or some type of protection in order that they can fix kind of a design flaw of still iPads today. There's not a great way to prop them up. If Apple expects these things to be laptop replacements or notebook replacements, then they kind of have to have a way to stand up on their own, and something I kind of appreciate about the fairly clunky design of the Surface Pro is that even though it does look a little bit rough around the edges, that kickstand is very helpful, and when you buy an iPad straight out of the box, it's not able to support itself. You have to hold it there or prop it against something, and yes, this definitely entices most people out there to either get smart covers or keyboard cases, though I have never and likely will never buy an iPad Pro smart keyboard case. That thing is incredibly expensive, which makes the smart connector on the iPad Pro kind of sad, given I've owned 2 iPad Pros in my life, both of which had smart connectors, and on neither of them did I end up using them. I just can't justify the price of a $160 or $180 keyboard when the device itself has a perfectly decent keyboard on it already. And I've grown up with using virtual keyboards. I've grown used to not having travel. I've gotten used to being able to use a touchscreen adequately, and I just don't miss it. I don't miss mechanical keys. I don't miss the physical keyboard when I use my iPad. That's why I'm totally fine with using it virtually. And what's so beautiful about the virtual keyboard with iOS 12 now on my 10.5-inch iPad is that this is the best way to do multitasking on any iOS device. There's people out there who still wish regular-sized iPhones would be able to do split-screen multitasking just like Android has, but anytime I have an Android phone and I start doing the split-screen stuff, it doesn't feel thought out. Everything feels like it's crowded for space. I'm stuffing up the display with too much information, and I can't look at everything at the same time. It feels inefficient, and I know I use this word a lot, but it feels clunky. It feels like it was not meant to do that, yet the operating system is allowing these apps to do that. I never get that feeling with split screen on the iPad Pro. It's by far one of my most commonly used features, is just running 2 apps at the same time, or maybe having picture-in-picture running simultaneously. And what's great about having it with an iPad is that you can still bring up the keyboard and be looking at what's going on. You can be seeing Discord chat messages or texting messages while browsing Twitter and doing stuff like that, or while reading emails, and it all still feels very intentional. It feels very efficient and not cluttered, not like everything's trying to stuff itself on the screen at the same time. And I'm no engineer, but I'm gonna go ahead and take a guess that that's because the iPad is bigger. It has a large display. One thing that I was very passionate about the first time I got this iPad, and I included it a lot in my review, is how fast the refresh rate is on the ProMotion display. A lot of people fell in love with this display because I believe it's one of the only Apple displays out there that actually is running at a full 120 hertz, which means that animations feel very, very smooth and very, very natural, and people are really hoping that they'll bring ProMotion displays to Apple's own Thunderbolt display lineup once they bring them back from the dead, or bring them to iMacs, or perhaps even bring them to iPhones so that your phone would be able to be sporting a 120 hertz refresh rate. That would be insane. However, I have to mention, you really do get used to it. You know, back when I first unboxed and switched to this iPad, that ProMotion display was super noticeable, but over this past year, I've grown to get used to it, and originally, looking at this display and then looking out at another 60 hertz display actually was really annoying, because I would be like, this one is smooth and that one isn't smooth. I've gotten to a point now where I've just grown accustomed to how the ProMotion display looks on the iPad, and I don't actually see the difference anymore between an iPhone or a non-120 hertz display. Maybe I'm going blind slowly, I'm not sure. Hopefully you out there who are still using the 2017 iPad, you can still notice the ProMotion display, but for me at least, I look at a lot of different screens, my iMac screen, a TV screen, my phone screen, my watch screen, and and this, and they all just kind of blend in. That ProMotion that I used to be a huge fan of has kind of blended into the background, and it's useful. I'm glad it's there, and I do hope Apple is able to bring a 120 hertz display to the rest of their lineup, from Macs all the way down to Apple Watches. I would love to see it be adopted, but I'd be lying if I said this is something I notice on a daily basis or that continues to blow me away. It really doesn't. I've gotten so accustomed to it that I just feel like that's how an iPad screen looks now. Even if I switch to an older iPad that does not have the ProMotion display, I get used to the 60 hertz again very, very quickly. It doesn't feel laggy, and I get why they added it. It was perfect for artists out there. It was perfect for people who love using their Apple Pencil. It makes the Apple Pencil even more accurate than it already is, but yeah, I'm sorry. Just as an everyday user, as someone who's not an artist, I don't really notice it anymore. Fun fact for you, this is most likely the last device Apple will be selling that has a physical clicking home button, not a solid state home button like the iPhone 7, but yes, they'd never put taptic engines, which also means no 3D touch, in the iPad lineup, and that means that the home button with Touch ID still physically clicks down, and I gotta say, I'm not gonna miss that, because it sounds like the next generation iPads that are gonna drop in the next couple months are gonna be ditching the home button and ditching Touch ID in favor of Face ID to be more like the iPhone 10. My home button's been acting up a little bit, not in a way that makes the device unusable, but it's definitely a noticeable design flaw. Sometimes if I just rest my finger on the home button, it will have a early click. You know, I'm not pushing down, but it just pops a little bit and I'll hear a little click. And I feel like it's because the home button is not installed that securely, and over time it's just wiggled itself around to the point that now when I press on that button, there's two clicks. There's a first click, and then when you push, you feel the actual legitimate second click. And it makes the device feel a lot more cheap. But luckily, I haven't had to use my home button very much, because with iOS 12, of course, you can swipe up to go home, and I've gotten used to that on my iPhone. Now I'm getting used to it on my iPad, and they're trying to get you used to it on their iPads. So it's so obvious what the next generation iPad Pros are going to be doing once they come out. They're adopting Animoji in the software and Face ID in the software. It's so obvious, but still, it's kind of weird that I've got this home button here that I'm never using anymore, and I'm not going to miss it. I'm looking forward to an iPad that has the same size bezel on all sides, and there's no more awkward clicky button sounds anymore. Interestingly, in 2018, we still are selling iPad Pros with headphone jacks. Every year I stop and think, maybe this year the iPad will ditch the headphone jack, but we can never be sure. It probably doesn't take up much space in the device anyway, and that's likely why Apple is keeping it around. They're thinking, it's not hurting anything. If we remove it, people are just gonna get upset. With the iPhones, it's okay. Everyone buys those, but with the iPads, just keep them in there. It doesn't do anything. I think it would make more sense to remove it just for consistency across the iOS lineup, but doesn't hurt it to be there. I won't fault it for being there. It's just kind of bizarre. But in terms of productivity, I definitely use this iPad Pro every single day for making all the video thumbnails across all of the Tailosive network channels. But surprisingly, I don't use my Apple Pencil as much as I used to. I still keep it around for precise masking jobs here and there, but if I really need to mask something adequately, I'll usually do it on Photoshop on my Mac instead of using a stylus in Over on the iPad app. But originally, my entire channel, Tailosive Tech, some of its first biggest videos were all made on the iPad Pro. So I still am a firm believer that you can run an entire YouTube channel just using your iPad if you need to. I did it for a while. The video editing, the thumbnails, the uploading, all of that stuff, I didn't need a Mac for it at all. And the Apple Pencil definitely helped with that. But now I'm doing all my productivity with more advanced cameras and more advanced computers, and doing any kind of video editing on the iPad itself really serves no purpose anymore. Though I have not noticed much of a down throttle in speed with the CPU. Never gets too hot, and yet things stay speedy. This thing has aged excellently, which is why I'm totally excited for the next generation iPad Pros, probably coming in the next 2 months. I'll probably never sell or give away my Apple Pencil though, because our beloved Tailosive Tech logo was designed with an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil by yours truly. So anytime we look at the Pencil, it's like, hey, this is where it all started, right? But in terms of functional use, I really wish Apple would update that Pencil. It's been far too long without them doing anything with it. I wish they could make some type of accessory that would allow you to charge the Apple Pencil from the smart connector. I know this is rounded on the side and the Apple Pencil's rounded on the side, so that wouldn't work very well, but some type of bracket or some type of smart cover that when the iPad is closed, it opens up the smart connector port area and your Apple Pencil could charge in it that way, because I don't really want a smart keyboard, but I really feel like the smart connector is not being utilized properly, given I've owned iPad Pros for several years and I've still never used that connector. I would really like to. Camera on it is still decent, but sometimes I have to wonder if, you know, Apple, maybe you should have just left off 4K video and then just gotten rid of that camera bump, because it is kind of annoying and it is kind of a noticeable irregularity with the iPad's design. Everything's so thin, everything's so light, but then on the back you just see this giant bump sticking out of the back of the iPad. And I appreciate the 4K video and I appreciate the 1080 at 60, but honestly, do we really need that there? Could we have removed the 4K sensor and just had a clean camera on the back? That would have made the unibody look so much better than it does right now, but I won't complain, it's not a huge issue. But other than that, I want to remind people I've been very happy with it. I kind of regret getting the 512 gigabyte option because when I bought it, I thought I was going to fill that up, but I then started switching over to iCloud storage, and once I did that, the local storage on the iPad was pretty useless, and now I have half a terabyte on this thing, and I'm not even using 60 gigs of it. So that was a waste. I think from here on out, I'm going to be getting the base storage options because so much of what I do is stored in the cloud anyway these days. Back when I bought this, I didn't have Wi-Fi, so I had to do everything offline or with cellular, so the extra storage was needed back then. Now I have great Wi-Fi at the office and at my apartment, so I don't really need this to have a bunch of storage on it anymore. So I ended up paying a lot for it, but overall, really great decision. Overall, very happy to use this thing on a daily basis, both for contacting people, browsing through emails, browsing through Twitter, chatting with people, as well as watching videos and live streams, and making my video thumbnails on here has been a blast, and I'm totally excited to see where Apple is going with the iPad lineup next. Do you have a 2017 iPad or older? I want to hear how it's aging for you. Has it been a good purchase? Let me know all that good stuff in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.